This evening, we welcome Greg Peterson, a partner at Phillips Lytle and one of the co-founders of the Robert H. Jackson Center, in a chat with Samite Mulondo. Samite was born and raised in Uganda, where his grandfather taught him to play the traditional flute. He also became an acclaimed Western flautist. In 1982, he was forced to flee to Kenya as a political refugee, and he immigrated to the United States 5 years later. In 2002, Samite founded Musicians for World Harmony, an organization dedicated to enabling musicians throughout the world to share their music, to promote peace, understanding, and harmony among people. He has traveled extensively through Uganda, Kenya, Congo, Rwanda, Tanzania, Latvia, Liberia, and Cote d'Ivoire to work in refugee camps with former child soldiers and AIDS orphans. He travels to sing, play music, and exchange stories with victims of war, poverty, and HIV/AIDS. Recently, Samite collaborated with the filmmakers of Alive Inside, an award-winning documentary on the power of music to awaken the memories locked away in patients with Alzheimer's and dementia. Last autumn, Samite released his 11th album, Resilience. As he says, music is a great force for healing, something we all need in our lives. That's because it is so powerful. It is able to build bridges between people, able to evoke memories and emotions, and as more and more research is showing, able to help people feel better. Please help me welcome Greg Peterson and Samite Mulondo.
It's an honor for me to be here, having a chance to interview somebody who's got such a broad brush perspective of life and has done so much for so many. But most importantly, how was Paul Simon? I want to know.
It was good to work with.
How did that set the stage? Not everybody gets a chance to work with Paul Simon.
It was very weird, actually, at first. I was in Ithaca, and they said, Paul needs you in the studio. And I said, what does he want? And I said, he wants you to play kalimba. And I said, what keys is the song? And they said, we can't tell you that. And I said, so I can't come because I have many different kalimbas, and they only play one key. Then I waited a few days. They said, okay, it's in F. So then I chose my F kalimbas, and I went to New York City, and I was picked up in a limo and taken in the studio, and I worked with an engineer there, Roy, his engineer. And then Paul came in, and I said, I love what you did, and then I was paid a lot of money for playing for 5 minutes.
Well, we're not going to pay you anywhere near that for more than 5 minutes. And the kalimba, that's it right over there, right?
Yes, that's one of them.
That's one of them. Just from a background perspective, when and where were you born?
In fact, I have one that he signed. That's
did he?
Yeah. I'm waiting to sell it on eBay one day.
I have the perfect beneficiary.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, yeah. When and where were you born?
I was born in a place called Mengo, which is near Kampala, the capital city, in 1957.
So 1957.
I'm 62 now.
62?
Yes.
I can tell you, if you look at the demographics of most of this group, you're a kid.
Yeah.
And in 1957, and just kind of fast forward then, and in 1971, Uganda went through a revolution, and there was a change in leadership, and a guy named Idi Amin came to power. Can you talk a little bit about what life was like in Kampala?
Yeah, so life before Idi Amin, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and the head of the house was my grandfather there, and I just remember every day there was music coming in from the forests, and my grandfather would play the wooden flute. It'd wake up the monkeys, the squirrels, and everything. We hated the sound then because we had to wake up too, but it was a very special, when I think about it, the birds, you'd hear birds singing in the forest, you'd hear monkeys, you'd hear all these beautiful sounds. And when Idi Amin came to power, the music stopped because there was a lot of shooting. If you ever go under a tree where there are birds and you clap, the birds stop singing. So that kind of was the effect. As a musician, I started hearing silence where normally you'd hear sound. Yeah.
How did this impact your family?
Well, in the beginning, we thought, people started getting kidnapped. And in the beginning, we thought they kidnapped other families. But soon, I lost some of my own family members. My big brother, Richard Mulondo, was kidnapped, tortured, and killed. My stepdad, kidnapped, tortured, and killed. So a few people that I knew, many people that I knew, would tell stories, actually, that people were kidnapped. So there was fear all the time.
While that was going on, going through school, what was the education system? Were they teaching the virtues of Idi Amin, a man who was president for life, conqueror of the British Empire? Did you get all that?
No, they didn't teach that at all, actually. But every single day you'd hear somebody killed, and we would start finding bodies on the street, actually. So life changed. There was death all the time. And then you'd hear the president just decided he's going to join in the car rallies. So he'd always be flagged off first, and then he'd win the rallies. He'd come at the end and say, I won. He wanted to be the best one in everything. If there was a soccer match, it was him who played and scored first. He was always the best. He made it so people thought he was the best president ever.
Did you ever have any chance were your paths crossed with his?
Yes. I was driving one day, and I looked on the side, and he was right there. He loved to drive. So he'd have a decoy driving and with cars and everything, and then he'd drive slowly afterwards just to see people. He loved cars.
What was you lost your stepfather, you lost your brother. How does one emotionally get through that?
You mean that whole experience? Well, it's always like you're always afraid you're going to be the next person, especially since I came from a big family. My brother was like my dad almost, even though, my dad was there. But my brother was maybe, was guiding me in many things. And I used to drive his Mercedes-Benz around when I behaved well. And so...
How often was that?
So I was afraid because he was kidnapped, tortured, they melted rubber on his back to get information out of him. So I was afraid that they're going to take me next. So there was always that fear that me next, yes.
How about your mom? Because that's usually the figure that gives you the most. Was she a musician? Was she this part of her world? Was she an impact on you like that?
My mom, she's now 93. She lives in Ithaca, New York. She definitely sang many songs to us every night. She told us a lot of stories, and some of the stories she told us were just lessons, things that we shouldn't do. For example, we would look at her plate when there was food, and she, and try to get her food that she hadn't finished. And that night she would tell us a story of a mother who died, losing because there was no blood in her body. So she had a lot of lessons like that, where you don't realize she's telling you a lesson. But also she told us traditional old stories that are passed on from generation to generation. And she's one of the few people that, few women that could play drums in Uganda, at that time.
So was she pretty much the inspiration for your interest, or were there other role models?
My grandfather.
Grandfather?
My grandfather playing the wooden flute was very instrumental in getting me to like to play the instrument. And also the birds. Even now the birds inspire me. I wake up in the morning and try to compete with them.
How do you do?
They usually go like, we are the king in here. Who is that? They go crazy. Yeah.
So tell us, you from your grandfather, did you pick up a flute? I see a flute here. I see other instruments. Was that where he handed it to you and said, here, try it, son?
Well, kind of. But he would make quick. He could make a flute out of bamboo really quickly, cut holes, and play. And of course, the first time I did it was just getting air. I couldn't make the sound. In fact, once I started making the sounds, and I was able to go to Makerere College School and introduced to the silver flute, the C flute. I was very excited when I was allowed to take it home to show him that I can play something he can't play. And I didn't tell him you need to cover the bottom hole. And so he played and he couldn't make any sound out of it. And I played and I made a beautiful sound out of it. And he always said, then again, which means then again, those are all material things to be left behind. He was a rich guy, a relative of the king, but he gave up all his wealth to his wife so he could bring Christianity to people in East Africa. So wherever he saw like people are getting so connected to material things, he would say, then again, those are all material things to be left behind.
It brings up a point of religion. And you grew up Protestant?
Yes.
And what is the principal religion otherwise in Uganda?
Christianity, there are a lot of Catholics. During Idi Amin, Muslims, more Muslims came out and started getting more education. But it's mostly Christianity. And lately it's Pentecostals.
Idi Amin was forced out of office in 1979, April 11th. Did that make any difference to you? Was that a reason to celebrate? Or?
No. At first, it was a celebration, but then Idi Amin was so paranoid that he knew where anybody shot. If there was a gunshot, Idi Amin, knew who did it, or there was more control. But after Idi Amin, there were guns everywhere. And anybody, we had Tito Kelo or Bote, we had a few crazy leaders. So all of a sudden, anybody could kidnap you, put you in a prison in their bathroom, and start collecting money. So after Idi Amin, crazy people realized they could do whatever he was doing, like what he was doing.
What was the aha moment in your family where, in 1982, you decided enough?
So a friend of mine and I, his name is Hope, during the bad times, we decided to create a cover band called The Mixed Talents to change the way people felt in Kampala, because there was a lot of sadness. And my friend Hope sang Marvin Gaye, covered Marvin Gaye.
Sure, now we're talking.
We had another friend who covered Bob Marley, and I covered Rod Stewart. And
Tonight's the night, yeah.
I even had the leather pants and everything, and we were very popular. It worked really well. We had people went crazy. People would drive to come see this crazy, beautiful band, but the killings went on. It didn't change anything like what we thought would do. Yeah.
So Rod Stewart didn't do it, huh?
Rod Stewart didn't do it.
So then, since Rod wasn't...
So one day I was having my shoes polished on the street in Kampala, and I noticed two policemen walking behind me, and they kept on glancing in my direction, and that normally would be like, okay, let them go, but when they reached the end of the street, they turned around and they came back, and now they were really looking at me. And the young man polishing my shoes said to me, I'm so sorry, because both of us knew what was going to happen next. Normally those two policemen would grab you, throw you in a trunk of a car, and you'd never be seen again. So as they came looking at me, I started thinking, okay, I'm not going to die like my brother Richard. I'm not going to die like the stories I've heard. I'm going to kill these two policemen right there. I'm going to use taekwondo. I had done taekwondo since I was 12. And I was going to hurt them in their private parts, and they're going to bend, and I'm going to do this, kill them, and I'm not going to die like my brother. I could be kidnapped. I could be shot on the street, but I'm not going to be taken away. So one policeman stood on the right and the other on the left, and they said, Samite, is that you? And I said, yes. Do you know who we are? Policemen. And they said, come on, Samite. You don't remember us? We managed traffic last time you guys performed. When are you performing again? So at that moment, I realized I was just about to become like Idi Amin's, soldiers. I was just about making myself feel comfortable killing. I was going to kill those two policemen. That's when I began to plan to leave, and I left soon after that.
Did you give them tickets to your next concert?
The policeman?
Yeah.
I didn't perform again. I left. Yeah.
So, telling your mother at some point, you're saying, "Hey, Mom, I'm blowing this pop stand." What did she?
She said leave.
Did she?
Yeah, she said definitely go. Yeah.
Did she feel any fear for herself or the
No.
other? No.
No. She didn't feel fear for herself.
So then you find your way here. Where did you go?
I went to Kenya, and I lived in a refugee camp for about maybe 4, 5, 6 months. And after the refugees who had failed their interviews changed my story, they had to change my story for me to pass the interview. I gave them my pack of cigarettes, and they rewrote my story, and they interviewed me again and again until they said, "Okay, you can pass now." And I did pass the interview, but it wasn't the true story. It was a story we made up. Because the true story is like I was about to join the culture of killing, and my brother was killed, and that doesn't pass those interviews. I had to, come up with a new story that they rewrote. So I was interviewed and allowed to stay in Nairobi. And then I didn't feel safe in Nairobi, so I made plans to move to the only country in the whole world that accepted refugees, the U.S.
And where did you come? New York City?
I went to New York City first, and I didn't feel the love that I thought I'd find in New York City. So I made plans. I moved to a small town called Ithaca, New York, where I soon found out that to make friends, I had to pretend I was a vegetarian.
Wow. Was there enough stuff downstairs for you? Get you through. Are you still vegetarian?
I eat meat before I go.
Okay.
You fill your stomach with a chunk of beef and then say, "Give me more of that tofu." I say,
So you're in Ithaca now. You've landed, and at some point you become best friends with one of your instruments. How did you perform shortly thereafter?
Well, I met a gentleman who asked me, "What are you doing in Ithaca?" And he said, "I met you in Kenya, and I bought some of your music in Kenya." And I said, I'm hoping to learn how to record, use technology to record. And he introduced me to a studio where they taught me how to record, and they used me as a guinea pig for other students. And then he heard my music, and he said, "Your shit could be really recorded properly." And so I said, "I don't have money." And the owner of the studio, and he said, "Well, the guy who introduced you to us is a millionaire." And so we recorded my music, and then we said, "What are we going to do with it?" And so one of the tapes ended in the hands of Lady Smith Black Mambazo's manager. And so they signed me up, and I started opening for Lady Smith Black Mambazo and touring around the country.
Was it part of the Wyndham group?
No, the Wyndham Hill, that was a letter I was signed under Wyndham Hill.
You forgot to mention that while you're in Kenya, you met somebody special.
I met a woman, her name is Joanne, in Kenya when I left the refugee camp. And she gave me a place to rehearse my music. She was an American woman. And also she helped me sell my first album. It was very difficult as an African to sell my cassettes. So, when you go to an Indian store...
You just dated yourself, cassettes.
They were cassettes, yes. So they would, say, "No, we don't take." And then but as an American woman, they would say, "What do you have?" And she would sell baskets and baskets of cassettes. So, yes.
And then you decided that you'd...
So we didn't feel safe in Kenya because there were a lot of foreign government spies. You're always afraid that somebody from Uganda is going to kidnap you and take you back. So we moved to the U.S.
So you moved to the U.S., and she became your wife?
She became my wife, yes.
And the rest is history.
She passed away, and now I have another wife. Her name is Sandra.
Sandra.
Yes.
We brought some instruments for you to perform. I think, Ed, the next thing, I'm going to pause because I want to hear his talents. That's what we're here to hear. And so why don't we just put the curtains up. I think we have a video we're going to show.
Yeah.
You want to set that up while they put
Yeah,
the
I'll
curtains
tell you. I'll tell you a little bit. The first short video is going to show you. After it started opening for Lady Smith Black Mambazo and I started touring around the U.S., one day I was doing a concert upstate New York, and this gentleman came and asked me, Samite, you know, my children were conceived to your music. I didn't know what to do with that information. But he went on to invite me to join him to do humanitarian work in Africa. And this was, you know, I just said, yes, I really want to go. I want to go back. And, but what I really wanted to say to him was, no, I don't want to go back. I'm afraid of going back to Africa. This was at the time when there was ethnic cleansing going on in Rwanda, massacres going on in Liberia. So anyway, he convinced me that, you know, we can go. And I wasn't too worried because he didn't really look like he could afford to put the trip together. But then he convinced PBS to air the documentary we were going to shoot there called The Song of the Refugee. So I found myself on a plane to Liberia. And once we landed, we headed towards an IDP camp, internally displaced persons camp. And there I saw the children in the camp. They had seen so much death and so much suffering that their eyes were just like this. They were numb. And flies went in and around their eyes. They didn't even blink. So it was very difficult for me to play, but after a while I picked up a flute. I picked up this particular flute actually, and I played it for the children that I'm talking about. When I finished playing just this particular song I played for you, all of a sudden I noticed that the children's eyes were focused. And they were pulling on my shirt and they were telling me, we have a song, can I sing for you? And so the children started singing. The mothers heard their children singing. This is in an IDP camp, internally displaced persons camp. And soon the mothers came over, took over the whole song, the whole show with their own music. And this, you know, slowly even the men joined in. And this happened everywhere we went, from one camp to another. And it showed us that music had the power to heal even the deepest of wounds. But especially when we ended in Rwanda, there the refugees were returning from where they had escaped to in the forest to escape the massacres of the ethnic cleansing. And there it was very, very difficult to play. And I was sitting right there and I noticed a young, you know, sitting thinking about the whole thing. I noticed a young boy looking at my flute. So I knew he wanted to know about the flute. So I asked him, where's your mom? And he shook his head because he didn't speak English. Then I asked him in Luganda, Mama waruwa, and he still shook his head. So I figured, let me try Swahili. I said, Mama yako wapi? You know, jina lako ni nani? What's your name? And so we started communicating, combining Luganda, English, and his Kinyarwanda. And he told me, everybody is dead. Amekufa, wote wamekufa, everybody is dead. And then he took off, and I thought I had just traumatized him. But then he came back with another boy, 7 years old. He had just met him, and he wanted me to play the flute for him. So I did. Soon I had about 30 kids around me playing buckets like drums and singing. So I knew I had to, you know, to take that much further. So I created an organization called Musicians for World Harmony that helps people to sing again, people that are distressed. So the first video you're going to see, short one, is about 3 former child soldiers. These are kids that are kidnapped when they're really young, 7 years old, and they're made to kill their parents, their friends' parents. They kill their own parents, and this way they can't come back after they've been turned into child soldiers. So in this video, you can see what we do with them.
The idea of Music Heals program is to bring the healing power of music to victims of war, to former child soldiers, to kids who were exposed to the worst tragedies. Young people who were kidnapped very early age and turned into killers. They were made to kill people in their families. They were made to kill people in their villages. And now they're trying to come back into society.
I happened to have been captured by the LRS sometime. I went to the bush, but I'm so happy that I'm alive. I came back. Things were so hectic there. Like you could kill someone against your will. Somebody who has never done something bad to you. But I asked that what? Kill that person. Which is not good. But if you were to refuse, then they would finish you up.
On this trip, we selected 3 individuals that we worked with, and this was so that we can follow them, so that we can work with them, help them bring out their pain through music, but especially bring out their dreams for the future through music. And it really is a really powerful program because you can see the process as it works. You can see the beginning as you're beginning to talk about how they're going to say their stories through music. You can see they're anxious, you can see they're afraid, but then you can see as they're beginning to get the idea and they're blossoming, and it's a really, really beautiful program. So we find out what their interest is, if they are interested in music, if they're interested in poetry, interested in something to do with the arts. Other people provide them with food, with shelter, with education. Sometimes we forget the healing the soul, and I think music has the power to do that. Take 6, I think it is. The 3 boys that came in from Soroti came to Kampala to join me in this Music Heals program. Justin, Mercy, and Philip are some of the most amazing people that I've ever met. You could tell they've gone through a lot in their life. You can tell that it's not easy for them to express, to say what they went through, because it wasn't easy. It's not something that you want to brag about, but I can see that they want the world to hear. They want the world to change. They want to change and bring peace. Of course, you can hear it through the music. That's what they're singing. They say, put the gun down. Bring peace. Bring peace. Stop killing. I think there's no more powerful message. You can't ask for a more powerful message.
With peace, no more war. With love, no more cry. With love, no more cry. Just peace. Just peace. Harmonize the place to make a better place. Almighty Creator, all we need is peace. Drop the guns. Keep harmony closer. Befriend the world. I'm the world. You're the world. We're the world. With peace, no more war. With peace, no more war. With love, no more cry. With love, no more cry. Just peace. gives peace.
Another very short one is about what we found is it's very difficult to keep raising funds and going, so we try to interest people with their local musicians to go into these refugee camps and perform. So you see a short video where refugees were coming in from Congo, and we convinced the local musicians to come and bring them entertainment. But it's usually very difficult because they don't want to work with refugees, because refugees have more money and allowance and medical. And so we say, we'll take you there for $30. How many people can you give me? So we'll give you 30 musicians. And for how long will you play? They say 1 hour. I said, sure. And then when they go there, they realize they're bringing joy to these kids who've been hearing explosions. And the mothers are dancing, and the children are just so like can't even believe seeing their mothers dancing. And then the musicians go back by themselves without being paid. So that's one way to introduce them, that you can use your music to make the world a better place.
Tambula buli wamu wonna naye kati kubanga nkola ennyimba ntwala ennyimba mu refugee camps okubeera abantu basanyusaako.
Anasema anapeleka nyimbo kwa refugees kama kwa watu wafurahi.
So the children are so happy, and the musicians go back and realize they can make the world a better place with their music. The last one is a very short one, is about how we've expanded to bring music to people with dementia and also people who are dying in hospitals. That's this short clip.
These people that we see in this nursing home, their spirits are dumped on because we're locking them away. But when you bring the music, that spirit is what you see that comes out. The spirit is still fresh and young.
My pain is very painful.
Oh, sorry.
But you know what?
What?
I can take a lot of pain.
You look like a very strong person.
I am. Yeah. I'm very strong. Very soothing.
Isn't it? You need to have that person in front of you who you're going to be sharing with.
Keep playing.
It's not something you can just switch on. You have to completely open yourself up give yourself. And once you give yourself, then it opens up dialogue.
Take this off, please. Now, when you go back to Uganda,
Yeah.
they'll ask you who gave you that. What are you going to say?
The strongest woman I've ever met.
Thank you. That's who I am right now. Can I play you some music?
Sure, please.
Yes. This is a song about the experience living in Ithaca, New York, compared to living in Uganda. When you're getting married in Uganda, you tell the woman you're going to marry that you will provide, which means you're going to bring a lot of meat on the table. In Ithaca, if you say that, you don't get married. You have to say things like, I'll bring you tofu, I'll bring you sprouts. That's how you impress the woman in Ithaca, New York. This is a true story. In fact, my neighbor's dog in Ithaca was a vegetarian. And I always wondered, like, if I was to slide in some ground beef under the fence, if that would change the way that dog barked. Oh, kwagala nnyo bambi yakuleeteranga akabisi maama yakuleeteranga akabisi olyeko oh. Kwagala nnyo bambi yakuleeteranga akabisi maama yakuleeteranga akabisi olyeko oh. This is an old kalimba. It's over 100 years old. It's from Tanzania. It has a different sound. And the keys, those of you who don't know what the kalimba is, these are bicycle spokes that are flattened with a hammer. So we've been doing recycling for a long time in Africa. Thank you. Oh, I shouldn't touch this, huh? Can you say Anyoyo? Anyoyo. So one day I was invited to sing for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and I walked in and people were crying backstage. So I said, what are you guys crying for? And they said, His Holiness is here. And I said, he's just a guy, just another guy. Don't cry. So I performed for him, and when I looked behind, he was thanking me like this, and I started to cry, just like everybody else. And I cried for a few days after that. So in this song, I used to, I call it my Dalai Lama song right now because of that experience. But Anyoyo is who is out there. When you ask for help, who is out there? Can you say Anyoyo? Okay, now say Anyoyo, Anyoyo. Let's hear that. That's beautiful. Who thought lawyers can sing? Let's just do it again. Anyoyo, Anyoyo. Really beautiful. Now that you know the part, please don't come in until I tell you when to come in. Here we go. Anyoyo, Anyoyo, Anyoyo aita kumuvule, kumuvule kuliko nsimbyegwire, nsimbyegwire muwala wa maye. Tata yagenda nganadda, aligenda okudanga luwedo kwabya. Tata yagenda nganadda, aligenda okudda nga luwedde ngenze. Anyoyo,